The chair recognizes the honourable member for Killarney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Maybe you had the same writer, Mr. Deputy, before I commence, I went to attend a basketball match on Monday. Took my grandson and a few of his friends, and I was pleased with the performance, and I would like to congratulate Sunland Baptist Academy Stingers, who was victorious in the Hugh Campbell basketball tournament. And I must say that this is their second victory. They're back-to-back, that is. And I also want to congratulate the head coach for doing such an excellent job, Mr. J. Philippe. Mr. Deputy, I want to thank Killarney for giving me this opportunity to speak in these honorable chambers. And I will deal with Killarney's issues at the end of my debate, so in the interest of time. But allow me to send condolence out to Reverend Dr. William Thompson on the passing of his wife, Betty. Mr. Deputy, in his mid-year statement, the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Finance, said that in the first 6 months of the year, total revenue collections are estimated at $1.2 billion, which represents a 111.5 million increase over the same period last year. He added that to date revenue collections account for 44.5% of the annual budget target. And to put this in plain language for Bahamians, the PLP has admitted that they are collecting a lot and lots of money. Plenty money. But Bahamians already know this. They know you're collecting plenty money. They did not know it because of their roads. Their roads are no better. Just the other day in New Providence, people had to complain in the media to get this New Day administration to fix the potholes that are all over the place. And Killarney's potholes are being ignored. I will speak about that at the end. Bahamians know the government is collecting plenty money because of how they see the PLPs living high and mighty. The PLP has brought on plenty of their consultants. In the budget for this fiscal year, they put in there more than $60 million for consultants. The money is flowing to these PLPs just like the champagne that is flowing in first class with PLPs flying all over the world on their expensive trips. While many ordinary Bahamians, Mr. Deputy, are struggling to pay their bills, these PLPs have the money to buy brand new cars. They're now riding around town in new Teslas, Mercedes-Benz and BMWs. They now have the money to buy big houses out in gated areas. They are now walking around with designer watches and expensive jewelry, all thanks to getting straight from the New Day administration, and it's plenty money. There's one rule for them and one rule for everyone else. Don't forget how the Prime Minister broke curfew in his first Christmas in office so he could sneak out to pay for expensive presents. But that's past. Let me define what the supposed New Day means. It means that Bahamians are no longer working for their families and for themselves. This sad New Day means that Bahamians are working hard for the PLP and for the Minister of Finance, who are recklessly wasting our money and living their best lives on the backs of the Bahamian people. Bahamians are working, Mr. Deputy. to pay the PLP for their expensive ways, their luxury travel, their special consultants, their expensive conference. The editorial in the Nassau Guardian this week noted, and at the end of my speech, I will table all documents to support what I say. Quote, there is a serious disconnect between the world in which the Prime Minister lives and the reality of ordinary Bahamians who are being squeezed financially. It went on, many people who can barely make payments on their homes' mortgages, pay school fees and medical bills are being squeezed by increased real property taxes. For example, there are some instances where real property taxes increased 3- and 4-fold. Some people from 3,000 to 13,000. It went on to say, and on the instruction of the government, these taxes are being added to mortgage payments by lending institutions. The editorial also noted the Prime Minister neglected to acknowledge that his imposition of 10% VAT on previous VAT-exempt breadbasket items negatively impacts the poor, or that his new intention to impose VAT on medical bills for the privately insured will harm the middle class. We have an out of touch, uncaring, indifferent Prime Minister and government. Many more Bahamians, Mr. Deputy, are going hungry, even as the government is collecting plenty money. As the Guardian also stated, wages in the country remain stagnant, end quote. Mr. Deputy, the other way we know the government is getting in plenty money is the travel budget keeps going up as it keeps going as sky high as when the Prime Minister jets off with his big delegation on his latest foreign adventure. The Nassau Guardian noted this in its story on February 23rd, 2023. Headlined, Government Travel Budget Grows from 14.8 million to 18.8 million, end quote. The travel budget for the Office of the Prime Minister has increased by a whopping 1,534,213. And I have said repeatedly, the Prime Minister needs to spend more time at his desk and read, because if that had happened, the mistake he made in here the other day about the deficit, now we must determine who's speaking the truth, but we'll deal with that at another time. Bahamians are losing track of how many times the New Day government has jacked up the travel budget since coming to office. This is the money that helps them to see the world in luxury at the taxpayer's expense. This is the money that pays for the Prime Minister to go to every conference he could find all over the globe. Mr. Deputy, all this money that's coming in is because of the taxes our people are paying. The Prime Minister won't remove the tax of the heartless breadbasket tax. Heartless breadbasket tax he refuses to remove. He will not reduce the gas taxes. In fact, the PLP is getting ready to increase national insurance rates to take more of the people's money. And NIB is a noteworthy entity. The problem is, no one trusts the New Day administration to responsibly oversee this money they intend to extract from struggling Bahamian workers. Seeing all these PLPs living in the good life has caused Bahamians to lose trust, and that this administration could be a responsible steward of their tax dollars. And this government is blind and indifferent to the struggles and the needs of the poor. We are instructed in Psalm 34, the Lord hears the cry of the poor. But this Prime Minister and the PLP are deaf to the cries and the needs of the poor Bahamians. The Prime Minister and his government have made the cost of living crisis much more worse. Mr. Deputy, they have introduced the brave Davis inflation on top of the world's inflation. Bread basket items, 10% increase. Prescription drugs, 10% increase. Light bill, cost increase. Cost of running business, increase. Real property tax, threefold increase. Increasing claims on insurance, 10%. Increasing claims on deductible, 10%. Increasing national insurance. They're questioning taking landlords' rental money? Oh my God. Increase in driver's license for some heavy-duty equipment. And they attempted to increase costs on custom brokers, which would have caused the cost of living to increase even further. My, Mr. Deputy, the brave Davis taxes, I have so much more to name. The brave Davis inflation is really killing us. Because of the tragic and massive failure at BPL, electricity bills are out of control. Here's what the PLP promised, but miserably failed to deliver from their blueprint for change. Quote, within the first 100 days, we will cause a review of BPL operations to reduce cost of electricity, maintain a reliable electricity, and enter into contractual arrangements which would put BPL on a solid financial footing, and most importantly, reduce the cost of living and doing business in the Bahamas, end quote. After many hundreds of days in government, the PLP has instead increased the cost of electricity. The supply is often unreliable, and the cost of living and doing business have spiraled out of control. They have miserably failed to live up to these basic promises, just as they are failing on many fronts. Mr. Deputy, one of the major successes of the last F&M administration was the deal for the new cruise port in the city of Nassau. This $300 million development has the potential to transform our city center. It is scheduled for grand opening in May. The city of Nassau has the potential to be a major economic driver for the country. The majority of our tourist arrivals are cruise arrivals, and the Nassau port is our major port. We must do more now to ensure that Nassau becomes what it should be. There are several components in this. One relates to removing derelict buildings in the city center. I was pleased to hear the Minister of Tourism say the government has issued 9 demolition orders for derelict structures in downtown. My administration started the work of demolishing derelict structures in this area, including the old post office and the Churchill building. Through lawful means and with notice, the government should identify derelict structures in the city of Nassau and ensure that they are demolished. The continued presence of these buildings prevents major development in the city. And once they are removed, the area will look better, and there will be interest in buying declared land. It is also time for Parliament to pass and for the government to enact legislation more clearly defining the municipal district of the city of Nassau, and to empower a statutory body and city manager to run the city. The city needs day-to-day leadership, a funding mechanism, and certain independence to ensure things get done in a timely and organized manner. Beautification and maintenance cannot be a one-time thing. It must be ongoing. This will require a public-private partnership in which landscaping and other such activities are done, perhaps through a private company. Part of the reform of the city also needs to be a more aggressive and consistent policing plan. We cannot have a nice city where Bahamians, visitors, and their families can't enjoy it if the area is not safe. Millions of people come to the port in Nassau each year, and the port developers are doing their part to make it nicer. The Bahamian government must do its part to make it nicer. There were plans for a new central bank, which was ready to go, and which the PLP has stopped. We were planning a new Supreme Court complex on the site of the old post office. What has become of this? We should also revisit plans for the boardwalk along Bay Street and plans for Western Esplanade, Fort Charlotte, and Ara Key. Mr. Deputy, the Prime Minister unsuccessfully attempted to paint a rosy picture of where we are as a country in his mid-year statement. It is true that the state of the public finances has improved since the worst days of the pandemic. At that time, my administration was called upon to save lives and livelihoods. The investments we made in Bahamians through the historic feeding program, record unemployment assistance, and loans and tax relief to businesses helped us to be able to recover once the virus became less of a concern. Right. Mr. Deputy, during the pandemic, no civil servant, Parmesan staff, no civil servant were laid off. As cried by many, would have resisted this. As a result of no civil servants being laid off, through the salary deduction process, there would have been minimal or no default in car loans because the payment, their salaries continued. No default in personal loans, no default in mortgages, no default in credit cards or rentals. Mr. Deputy, as a result of them being paid, increase, non-performing, there was increase in non-performing loans at the bank. If they were not paid, the non-performing loans at the banks would have increased. Mr. Deputy, as a result of them being paid, we were advised that the banks were able to quickly recover their profitability, and if we look at the profit today, it's record high. Mr. Deputy, what amazes me about the Prime Minister is how little he has done to deliver on some of the major initiatives needed for our people. The PLP talked a big talk about the Grand Lucaya. We heard how quickly they would solve the matter and cause a sale to happen in quick order. No sale has happened. It appears none is imminent. The people of Grand Bahama are still waiting for a solution on the hotel from the PLP. The same issues is at play on Grand Bahama. There is no new airport. We keep hearing that we are getting closer and closer in the process to get close to beginning the airport. However, for all the talk and promises, there's no new airport. Mr. Deputy, the same failure to deliver is evident when it comes to the hospital in New Providence. My administration left in place, for the benefit of Bahamian people, we left in place the funding for a major new wing at PMH. The New Day administration chose not to go ahead with the project that would have delivered better healthcare facilities for our people. Instead, we hear pie in the sky talk about building a new hospital somewhere else. Bahamians know better than that. They know they are not getting any new hospital built by this PLP administration before they leave office at the next general election. Bahamians know the PLP's track record. This type of big talk does not fool them. In fact, in 2014 at the STEM SO conference in Grand Bahama, the now Minister of Health, who was then Minister of Grand Bahama, member for Tall Pines, stated, I quote, "Grand Bahama will have a new hospital by 2017, a 150-bed hospital." Hospital not seen yet. If the PLP had continued with the project we left in place, the new wing of the hospital would be well out of the ground and hundreds of Bahamians would be employed on the project. The government is looking at a new site for what they call the new hospital near my bordering my constituency, I asked the government, who is designing this hospital? Who is building this hospital? You know it's not being designed by the Beck group. How many Bahamians will be employed? Or is it all or mostly foreigners? And is the government aware that the site that they're looking at is not all government owned? The 15 acres in the center of such site is privately owned. Is the government looking at that and dealing with that appropriately? I can say that the government has already laid out the plan, but I'm certain that the Minister of Health will answer such questions as I would have more to ask. At the last general election, the people voted. They spoke clearly in a democratic and peaceful manner. We were sent to opposition and the PLP to government. We respect the decision of the people. Government must respect the right of citizens to peacefully assemble and to protest. Bahamians were deeply concerned at how protesters were treated at the recent CARICOM conference. A small number of protesters wanted the New Day administration to hear their concerns on immigration and other issues. And this New Day administration did not want to hear them. Videos circulated on social media of Bahamians being manhandled and detained for trying to speak out. It was disgraceful. It was shameful how these Bahamians were treated by an administration that increasingly is intolerant of dissenting voices. Shame on you. It's as if the Prime Minister no longer wants to see and hear the voices, the cries and the needs of the Bahamian people. Bahamians increasingly think he only likes to be around big shots and at overseas conference. It looks like he feels more comfortable with foreigners than with his own people. Democracy is a messy and beautiful thing. Popular and unpopular views and opinions have a right to be expressed in a democracy. No one should stifle the right of others to speak. Let me repeat. No one should stifle the rights of others to speak. This is why, Mr. Deputy, put my time back. Put my minute back.
Yeah, opposition is good school. That's good cause.
I got choked. This is why the FNM freed the broadcast media. One of the great legacies of the FNM is the promotion of free and open exchange for a diversity of voices. There was no justification for manhandling Bahamians at the CARICOM conference in the manner that it occurred. Bahamians are angry at how this administration treated other Bahamians. In a letter to the Nassau Guardian on February 7, 2023, titled, "Trampling on Constitutional Rights," Bishop Walter Hanschel said, quote, "I am appealing to the government of Bahamas to listen to the cries of Bahamian people and do something to bring relief to their pain. I beg our politicians to not ignore the genuine concerns of the people who are now feeling anger, which may escalate to bitterness and rage. If the cries of the people continue to be stifled, we will see much unrest in the future, which we cannot afford," end quote. We in the opposition will be watchful for further undemocratic actions by this New Day administration. Mr. Deputy, last December was the first full year of the New Day administration. In that year, there were 128 murders, which was one of the highest murder totals in our history. Sadly, with the people having no serious crime plan, PLP having no serious crime plan, crime and violence may increase even more. This year has begun with more bloodshed. Just over the weekend in New Providence, police reported that a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old were shot. The shootings continue, the killings continue, the robberies continue. Rather than bragging as he was in his mid-year statement, the Prime Minister should be ashamed of the failure of his administration on crime. And since the election, all we have gotten from the Prime Minister are meetings and talks and promises after promises on crime. Every few months, when we hit an even worse period, he releases yet another empty statement or convenes a meeting pledging that things will get better. But things don't get better. The robbers keep robbing, the gunmen keep killing. In the PLP's blueprint for change, they pledged, quote, "We also commit to enhancing crime-fighting methodologies in our aggressive war against crime," end quote. Further went on, thus far, Mr. Deputy, they have delivered no crime-fighting methodologies, and there has been no war on crime. Instead, in New Providence, it has been near free reign for the robbers and the gunmen. And in some neighborhoods, mothers are afraid for their children to be outside to play. Fathers fell leaving their homes unattended due to the prevalence of break-ins. How could the Prime Minister boast in his mid-year statement about how good things are when New Providence continues to have high levels of crime and violence? And we are seeing more crime on some islands. The Prime Minister cannot possibly think of the current state of affairs as normal. Bahamians deserve better than this. The PLP and its leader are failing to deliver in the crime fight that they promised in their blueprint. I remind them that a blueprint is only something on a piece of paper. We need action, not simply more talk of plans that never materialize. Mr. Deputy, in addition to higher light bills and more taxes, the PLP continues to make it more difficult for Bahamian businesses and citizens. The Guardian editorial of this week also quoted, I quote, "Routine services take an inordinate amount of time. No one appears to be in charge, and it is difficult to have any query answered in a timely manner. Delays continue to be experienced, whether obtaining police character references, renewing business licenses, VAT stamping and or recording deeds and documents, and obtaining immigration status, whether work permit, permanent resident status, or citizens. We recommend to the government that it devotes its energy to improving delivery of service to the public, and in these times, increasing revenue reduce." Mr. Deputy, time is running out, I would say that Bahamians need a better day and not more of this new day disaster. As to my constituencies, my parks are continuously being neglected, and we are taking it upon ourselves to clean such parks. Our roadways continues to be littered, and our road on the West Bay corridor opposite Saffron Hill, Mr. Deputy, is being eroded by the sea, and it's only a matter of time before the West Bay opposite Saffron Hill collapses. Already the ministry has placed a ribbon in the area, but that is not sufficient. Our seawall in the Nesbitt area needs to be put in place. It's only a matter of time with a sea surge that the West Bay Street in that area collapses and becomes impassable. It's time that the government deal with it now as opposed to disaster very soon. You cannot continue to ignore our voyages. And I want to remind Killarney residents that our tree planting program continues. The residents, especially those who have just recently moved within the area of months, and extending to all residents, can contact the office where we would be issuing trees free of charge to our residents. And the trees are as follows: avocado, lime, mango, guava, and coconut, a selection of your choice. The potholes, Mr. Deputy, must be repaired, especially a large pothole that I can literally sit in on the Sea View Drive. Mr. Deputy, Killarney is being ignored, and I say my people are asking me to express their concerns when I come to Parliament. Repair our potholes, clean our bridges, fix our parks, fix Bay Street. It's being eroded by the sea. In front of Suffern Hill, it's only a matter of time before the sea comes across. By Nesbitt, it's only a matter of time before some heavy surge causes collapse of the Nesbitt area, of the West Bay Street area, compromising the homes on the side of that particular bridge. So, I ask the government to kindly save ourselves millions of dollars by repairing Bay Street before it collapses and is absorbed by the sea. Mr. Deputy, I thank you very much.